The Lighthouse Keeper's Promise. A love that never faded. The waves crashed gently against the rocky cliffs of Seabrook, a quiet coastal town where time moved slower and love stories were whispered with the wind. Nestled at the edge of the town stood the evergreen lighthouse, a beacon of hope for sailors, but also the keeper of a love story that had endured beyond time. For over 40 years, the lighthouse had been tended by Daniel Carter, a quiet man whose heart belonged to only one woman, Clara Monroe. Their love had been written in the stars, tested by distance and strengthened by promises never broken. But life had a way of challenging even the strongest of hearts. The beginning of forever. Daniel and Clara met as children, growing up in the town where the sea was their playground, and the lighthouse was their secret hideaway. Daniel had always dreamed of taking care of the lighthouse, and Clara had dreamed of seeing the world. One summer night, beneath the glowing lantern of the lighthouse, Daniel held Clara's hands and whispered, "Wherever you go, I'll be waiting. The lighthouse will always guide you back." Clara smiled, tucking a tiny seashell into his hand, a piece of the ocean she wanted him to keep. But fate had different plans. Clara left Seabrook at 18, chasing her dreams to become a writer, promising to return when the time was right. Daniel stayed, tending to the lighthouse, writing letters she never received. The world outside took Clara further away, but Daniel never stopped waiting. The letters that never stopped. Every night, Daniel would climb to the top of the lighthouse, writing a letter by candlelight, signing it, "Forever yours, Daniel." He never knew if she would read them, but he never missed a single day. The town moved on, years passed, and people whispered that Clara had forgotten. But Daniel never stopped believing. Every ship that passed, every seagull that cried in the distance, he looked for her return, the unexpected return. Decades later, on a cold autumn night, a storm rolled into Seabrook. The lighthouse stood strong, but Daniel's heart had grown weaker with time. He was now an old man, yet he still waited, still kept his promise. That night, a car pulled into town, and from the mist stepped Clara, older, but still carrying the same seashell Daniel had once given her. She had searched for him for years, reading every single letter he had written but never sent. She had never stopped loving him, but life had kept them apart. And now she had come home. A love that never faded. Daniel, now frail, held Clara's hands once again beneath the lighthouse glow, just as they had done all those years ago. He smiled and whispered, "The lighthouse never stopped guiding you home." Clara, with tears in her eyes, whispered back, "And I never stopped looking for its light." That night, for the first time in decades, Daniel did not write a letter. Instead, he lived the ending he had always dreamed of, with Clara beside him, watching the waves under the lighthouse's glow. And from then on, the light of the lighthouse was not just for sailors, but for lovers who believed in promises that never fade. A final promise. Years passed, and Daniel and Clara remained together in Seabrook, living out their days near the lighthouse that had once been their guardian. But time, as it always does, moved forward. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel whispered to Clara, "If I ever have to leave this world before you, promise me you'll keep the lighthouse shining." Clara held his hands tightly, nodding with silent tears. And so, on a peaceful morning, as the waves kissed the shore and the lighthouse stood tall against the sky, Daniel passed away, leaving behind the love story he had spent a lifetime writing, The Keeper of the Light. Now it was Clara who climbed to the top of the lighthouse each evening. It was Clara who lit the lantern, just as Daniel had done for so many years. She read his old letters by candlelight, keeping his memory alive with every word. People in town still whispered about the lighthouse keeper's promise. They said if you stood beneath the lighthouse at midnight, you could hear Daniel's voice in the wind, whispering, "Forever yours." And though Clara grew old, she never stopped keeping the light burning. For her, the lighthouse was no longer just a tower, it was Daniel's love, guiding her home. A love story written in light. One final night, as Clara sat in her chair overlooking the ocean, she smiled at the lighthouse one last time. Her heart, tired but full, whispered Daniel's name. And then the light of the lighthouse flickered, as if answering her. The next morning, the town awoke to find the lantern still glowing, but Clara, the keeper of the light, had peacefully passed away in her sleep. Now, they say that every time a storm rolls into Seabrook, the lighthouse burns just a little brighter, as if Daniel and Clara are still there, keeping their promise, guiding lost souls back home. Because some love stories never truly end. They just shine forever, like the light in the distance, waiting for those who need it most. Epilogue. The Eternal Glow. Years after Clara's passing, the town of Seabrook honoured the lighthouse by renaming it Clara and Daniel's Light, a symbol of devotion, faith and love that refused to fade. Couples from across the country would visit, believing that standing beneath its glow would bring them eternal love. One winter night, a young traveller named Olivia arrived in Seabrook. She had read the legend of the lighthouse, and heartbroken from her own lost love, she stood beneath its beam, seeking comfort. As she looked up, she swore she saw two figures, one of an elderly man and a woman, hand in hand, watching over the town. A soft whisper carried through the wind, "Love never truly leaves us." And in that moment, Olivia realized that true love was not just about staying together, it was about never giving up, about carrying the light of love no matter where life took you. A final message to you, dear listener. Some stories touch our hearts deeply, leaving behind a warmth that lingers long after the last words are spoken. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of a love lost or a promise never forgotten, let it serve as a beacon of hope. Just like Daniel and Clara, love has a way of finding us, even in the darkest nights. If you've ever felt lost, know that there is always a light guiding you home. Perhaps it's in a memory, a song, a place, or a person waiting for you, just as Daniel waited for Clara. If you enjoyed this tale, you'll love the other heartwarming stories waiting for you. Dive into another world of love, hope, and second chances. Click on the next video and continue the journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and explore more emotional love stories on this channel. Every story is a light waiting to shine for you.